Good afternoon, Soul family. How's everyone doing? So, I was meditating for a energetic update and a message for the collective with my usual deck, the Egyptian tarot deck called Cartouche. And I came across some interesting channelings and updates and things that I've been reflecting on myself that I wanted to share. So the first thing that came up and that kind of got me connecting to all sorts of other things and channeling how this would be laid out was the water card in reverse. Let's just talk about the water card in general. So this is symbolic of the emotions, of fluidity, and one of the lines related to this is how one reflects life. You know, water reflects anything that when there's light around, you can see it. So how one reflects life. As I was sitting there, I realized that how the state of oneself is how one sees the world and how things are filtered in and received. And as I was looking at that sentence, the state of oneself, I realized that that was the state of one cell. The state of a single cell inside of the body is a reflection of the state of the entire being. How much light is filtering into that one cell, how much energy it has, how many nutrients it receives, how much the waste is efficiently removed is a state of the entire organism. And if we talk about one of the laws of the universe being as above, so below, from the microscopic level to the macroscopic, the huge, everything is a reflection of each other. So there's a counterpart for something happening on the tiny level on a much grander scale. So we are much more connected than we think we are. So the state of a single being within our collective is enough to change the course of everything and to be felt by everybody. So the overall reading today is concerned with the state of oneself being the reflection and how one receives the world and what can be done on a micro level and then eventually on a more connected level to accept this influx of energies that's happening right now. So let's talk about the following. One of the overall energy cards for the reading is this scarab beetle. This signifies a spiritual rebirth, change, acceptance, the dawning of new awareness. So change is on the way. Things are happening. And if we aren't receptive to them, if we aren't ready for them, they can be very disturbing. But nonetheless, change is on the way. Another one of the cards that came up was the Sirius card. And this is the card of universal awareness of the Aquarian future and basically the breadth of vision that comes with it, delimiting the mind, unprogramming it from limiting beliefs. Now, I wanted to just take that concept and apply it again to the state of a single cell, let alone a single human being. A single human being that deprograms themselves or unplugs themselves in the matrix has huge ripple effects, is capable of affecting all the people around this person and changing things on a universal level. Now think about how much more the effect would be if more people and more people would be affected. So let's take that back down to the level of the cell. If you detoxify a single cell or a collection of cells or an organ or the entire organism, you're going to see effects on a grander scale, like the effect being larger than the sum of the parts. And this was one of the concepts that I was focusing on in my post today, talking about how detoxifying your body can actually lead to unlimiting the mind because it's connected with how much energy is being received for the proper function of each cell. Now, the nature of the question being asked about an energetic update was the water card in reverse. This is speaking to stagnation and emotional dissatisfaction and blocks that are found when the waters of life and the flow cannot pass through easily because there is something blocking that light. Now, this isn't anybody's fault, but it happens to all of us. There are deep levels of blockages that can be found within our bodies and within our subconscious that, until cleared, do not allow the free flow passage of what needs to come through in order to illuminate us, enlighten us, and take us to higher levels of awareness. So this type of stagnation and instability also came with the air card, speaking of ignorance and detachment and energy drainage, having too much going on at once. So I'm being guided to speak about what it is that we can focus our energies onto at the moment in order to allow for a greater influx of energy and delimit us and allow us to reach a higher state of potential for each. So in this state of stagnation, in a state of energy drainage, we're being asked to focus on wisdom and adaptship, becoming an adept at working with energy. Because one of the main points out of this entire thing is that this is not merely a physical existence. There are spiritual and energetic components that, whether or not we see them or take care of them, they are playing a big role in influencing everything that occurs. So becoming adept at dealing with these energies and unblocking yourself, releasing what is within, is going to be key. It's going to be part and parcel to what ends up happening with what you're going to bring into this world. So that was that. The factors to consider here, and of course what we come up with, is the Horus card, the Eye of Horus over here, signifying healing on all levels. Now it's in reverse. So it seems to me that what we could best be focusing our energies on at the moment is healing on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. So when it's in reverse, it's speaking of physical neglect of sorts or bodily abuse. It's basically neglecting what your body actually needs in order to bring forth a higher state of awareness. So yeah, that's what we have over here. Disease and all of that is a manifestation of the limiting found on a single cell. So if the lymph system isn't flowing clearly between your cells, the lymph fluid is basically a nutrient-dense liquid that bathes your cells and gives them nutrients, and at the same time takes away the waste and transports them. Now, if it's clogged up, if it's sluggish, which is the case for the vast majority of us, because we haven't given this thought or considered that certain things are creating this type of inflammation and clogging up in the system. If cells are not receiving the information that they need, they are not functioning optimally, and therefore the entire organism is not functioning optimally. Not to mention that a certain clogged up system, whether that's on the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual level, leads to similar manifestations. When something is clogged up and not flowing freely, not only do you have stagnation on an emotional level, stagnation in your personal life, stagnation in what you can manifest and appreciate and experience in your physical existence, but you have such symptoms as the aggregation of heavy metals within these types of things. And scientific studies have also shown the connection between heavy metal aggregation and parasites like Candida, and also worms and so on. There's a whole bunch of them. So this is not the type of issue that can be addressed from dealing with one thing alone. Everything is interconnected. So once you start unraveling this ball of yarn, everything is bound to be connected and change on a very big level. I think that's something that, first of all, I didn't realize when I began to move away from certain things. The first thing that I did was I decided out of nowhere, looking for greater health, to try vegetarianism. I had no idea what it is that would bring me as an outcome. But what ended up happening over many years and different types of experiments was a vast shift in my consciousness, in the way that I perceived the world, in my energy levels, and on a cellular level, what I was receiving, because my cells were then freed up. The lymph system was bringing different proper nutrients and taking things away in a much more efficient way. So healing on a physical level is going to be connected to healing on a mental and a spiritual and an emotional level. Now, the clarifying card that I got for the Horus card here was fire. The life force. Passion, creativity. It's basically creative passions, and it's the connection of each individual to their higher self. Fire is purgative. It burns away. So while at the same time being something creative and passionate and wonderful, it also burns bridges and burns away things that are unnecessary. And it may be painful, but what it allows forth is so beautiful because it brings in new beginnings. It's like the Tower card in tarot. Now, the Fire card is like the phoenix that burns and then rises up from its own ashes. Healing was never going to be simple. Now, the solution, one card found over here, is the Set card in reverse. Now, this card, found in reverse, is indicative of malign intent on all levels. One of the manifestations of this is being your own worst enemy. Your subconscious mind essentially working against you. No matter what intent you place in the conscious, if you aren't dealing with these blocks and the things that are embedded deep within the cells, you see, because the subconscious level is both something that you cannot find within the body, as well as being something that is embedded deeply within our DNA. Traumas are encoded into you. Anything that's ever happened to your ancestral line is found within your body at this very moment. Not only is the trauma found there, but also every single gift and every single psychic manifestation and bit of information is found within our DNA. So again, healing and flowing with these energies does come from healing the body, which is then connected again to the mental, spiritual, emotional levels. So this subconscious blockage speaks of an adverse effect, an deceptive external influence, not of light, that may be misguiding and misleading one. Now, again, this is very symbolic because if you didn't already know this, but parasites can mind control you. This is fascinating stuff. It's also a little bit disgusting and weird, but you can read all sorts of books that speak of different types of parasites that take over different animals. And basically, there are ones that cause the animal to kill itself so that they can further their life cycle, ones that cause it to go and eat certain things because that's its food source. So at this point, we're talking about very complex and evolved beings that have a purpose, and they use our bodies biochemically in order to further their means. So on multiple levels, what I'm saying here is all the same thing, whether that's a subconscious block coming from within you, whether that's choosing to engage in addictive behaviors which allow deceptive entities to attach onto you, because basically we are the portals and we are the doors that allow these things in. There's nothing that happens to you without your invitation, whether unconscious or conscious. So this deceptive influence could very well be engaging in physical habits that feed a colony of organisms, which then perpetuate the cycle of addiction, because they are what's addicted to that drug or to that food, not you. And you simply perpetuate their existence, and they then call for this thing, and having never questioned where these thoughts are coming from, where these urges and cravings are coming from, you fall prey to this deceptive influence. What else can we say about the Set card over here? Evil intent comes in separation, trying to separate us and remove us away from unification. Now, it's like one of the main themes that is coming up for me is that in order to move forwards, we've got to unite. And that can come from the micro level. So working with rather than against your body. So allowing each of the organ systems and the cells to communicate better, to link up, sync up, rather than these dramas of separation and illusion that occur within the body, within the mind, within the collective. And within the body, that's definitely to do with the different kinds of colonies of parasites that you can find, the split in intent, essentially. Like your strongest currency is your energy, where you focus your intent. If you focus your intent on something for long enough and with utter belief and without the limitations in the way, limitations and the distractions, it is done. But if your desires and your intent is split up and divided between many things, as the card over here was saying about detachment and all sorts of energy drainage, you're not going to be manifesting to your full potential, and you're certainly not going to be creating from your higher self. Again, the creation from your higher self coming from healing your cells and uniting them. So the clarifier for the set card in reverse came up as receptivity, psychic gifts and reception, receiving, opening yourself up to receiving, and it's all connected. Again, if you open up a single cell to receiving more light, to receiving the nutrients that it needs, then you open yourself up to receiving knowledge and codes about who you really are and your gifts and your purpose and what it is that you're going to bring into the world. At the same time, this speaks of things hidden and not yet revealed. No healing and no growth happens all at once, and it certainly doesn't happen when it's not meant to. It happens step by step. Believe that this is a guided mission. Believe that this is happening for your highest good. And each thing that is revealed to you unravels a whole set of other things, and bit by bit leads you to unlocking your full potential. Now, the outcome cards are very interesting. The Earth card in reverse. So far in this reading, we have the water, air, fire, and earth cards. So all elements that interact together. And if we speak about the shape of the pentacle, the five-pointed star, you find that those four elements are in there. And the fifth is spirit. So spirit basically comes about and uses the medium of air, earth, water, and fire in order to manifest and create for you. So the Earth card is in reverse over here. It's speaking of using the gifts that you have, or at the very least unlocking the potential to understand what these gifts are. Otherwise, that energy will rebound upon you. We did not come here not to share our voices, our light, our gifts, and our expressions, but we become divided and enter into ourselves. And if we are to manifest a new earth or a new paradigm for everybody involved, we're speaking of each cell healing. If I'm to manifest a new paradigm within my own body, I'm to speak to each cell of my body, heal each cell of my body, so that the entire collective of my organism is healed and released, liberated. So if we're talking about a new earth for the collective, we're talking about one by one, liberating ourselves and accessing who we really are and sharing our gifts with the world. The physical perspective being out of whack. We're taking things too physically. It is a spiritual war. It is a energetic universe. And if we don't take care of that aspect, or if we neglect it and pretend it doesn't exist, in the same way that if we neglect the mental, the emotional, and the physical, we're not going to be getting anywhere. We've got to get to a much more unifying perspective of all these things being linked up together. Now, let's add a perspective of the Tao, concerning earth, air, water, and fire. Each one of those elements relates to a particular body system and organ within your body, and it functions in a certain way. So if you begin to look at the manifestations of earth, water, fire, and air, and how they relate to those organ systems and how to take care of them and how to allow the energy to flow, then you become a much more balanced organism, in the same way that the collective becomes a much more balanced manifestation if it deals with the universal laws and how these elements manifest into our lives. Finally, the clarifier for this earth coming up in reverse is the Ankh card, my absolute favorite card from this deck. It speaks of the life force, energy, and love, basically, which is all we are. This is a key. Now, this key allows you to reach higher states of awareness. This is a key to doors that you can yourself open. One of the interesting things about this key card, though, is that it could be hanging around your neck and you wouldn't even know it, and you wouldn't be using it to open up these doors. So it's essentially trying to bring your awareness to the fact that everything is contained within you. All that knowledge, all that information, all those gifts are within you. And until you access them, until you make it so, until you speak it into your world, it isn't going to happen. So that is some good encouragement about how contact with your own higher self is what's to bring about a collective shift. So the more each one of us fosters this connection, the more we change on a collective level. And to link everything back to the first comment, the state of oneself is a reflection of the world. So I hope this reading has left you with something to contemplate for the day, and take care of yourselves. Bye.